What About Vietnam? A podcast with Gary Newsom. The series where Curry talks with travellers about their experiences and adventures. Find out more about Vietnam from the people who have actually been there.
What about Vietnam?
Whether it's adventure, exploring the culture and cuisine, shopping, or just soaking up the sun. Let Carrie and her travellers pave the way for a magical holiday in Vietnam.
What about Vietnam?
Xin chào and welcome to What About Vietnam. Today we're going to talk about a beachside location called the Con Dao Islands. Now, when you start Googling and researching for a beachside stay, there's a lot of options in Vietnam. You've got a coastline 3,200 kilometres long to choose from. Now, but these islands are quite remote. They're a cluster of 16 islands to be factual. They are, I think, a less than hour flight out of Ho Chi Minh City. But the island, or the Con Son Island, which is the main one in the group, is very isolated and very raw in the sense that there's not a lot of touristy stuff to do. So, if you do want a very chilled out stay, this is definitely the location. If you're looking for a very luxurious stay, there are some absolutely beautiful resorts there. But even if you're just looking to do some snorkeling, do some nice swimming, lay on the beach, read a good book, and you really want to get away from the hubba of the world, this would definitely be my pick for you. Conor Kelly is my guest on the show today to talk about Con Dao. He did a trip with some friends very recently, and he really enjoyed it. And I think what you're going to get from this is some insights into just what he expected or didn't expect or was a little bit surprised about. There is a prison there with a museum. And, regretfully, there's quite a brutal past to that prison. So, when you do want to go and check out some history on the island, that will definitely come up. But as I said, quite a brutal past and something to, definitely take it in with context. I think also with Conor, because he's a podcaster himself, he's a great storyteller. He's also a teacher and he's also a journalist. He lives in Ho Chi Minh City, so it was very easy for him to pop over to the Con Dao Islands to take advantage of this short break. But I think for everybody listening, I really want you to just get some insights into what to expect there. When you start planning how much time you may want to spend there if you do want to go at all. Let's welcome Conor to the program. Hello, Conor Kelly. Welcome to the What About Vietnam podcast.
Hey, how are you?
We were just having a quick chat before this around the fact that we're both podcasters and we sort of both know what's coming next, but I'm hoping you'll allow me to kind of go all over the place with our subject as we're going to talk about a holiday or a short break you took on the Con Dao Islands.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm willing to kind of go into as much detail as I can from my personal experience and looking forward to sharing it because still to this day, it's probably my favorite spot in Vietnam and maybe ever just due to its complexity and beauty. So I'm looking forward to diving into it.
That's a big statement saying, best place ever. And because there's so many other beach resorts and beach destinations in Vietnam, for it to stand out amongst all of those, that's a big call. So firstly, tell us how did you come to the decision to go there in the first place?
Well, it was one of those ones where you discuss with your friends where to go as, say, a vacation or a short break. And I'd been to places like Danang, Nha Trang, Phu Quoc. And the reason why Con Dao stands out is because, for example, all of those beaches, I personally think if I was to go to them and not know where I was, for example, like somebody brought me there blindfolded, I would probably, get them mixed up, whilst Con Dao was something completely different. And I think the main reason I use that is because of the amount of litter that's on the other places, the lack of, I say lack of as if it's a bad thing. It's good that there's no litter in Con Dao, the crystal clear waters, etc. And so I think when I was actually arranging to go, I probably can't take too much credit because I went with some female friends and they were much, much better at organizing than I was. So they did their research, explained to me the hidden gem aspect, and said it's better than, let's say, a standard holiday to Nha Trang or Phu Quoc. Why not give it a try? To which I jumped at the opportunity. So that's really how it came about.
Okay, so you're right when you say hidden gem, because it's really only come on the radar for tourists, I think, really just pre-COVID. It was starting to get some attention. And, it certainly comes up in breezes of conversation, but it never as a standout. And for me personally, I always saw it as I have to have a lot of money to go there. Like, that Six Senses resort was really the standout thing about the place. And apart from that, the views from those windows and the sandy beaches and the beautiful lush hillsides, etc., I had no other perspective, and I don't even know why I didn't look into it more thoroughly. So I'm curious, what was your first impressions? Because you've been to the Nha Trangs, you've been to the Danangs, and you've been to the other places. So when you went and arrived, what was your first impression then?
I think it was probably shock because the airport was probably smaller than my office, which really struck me. I thought, wow, this is really quite bizarre. And upon that, I rang the hotel that we'd booked to order as a taxi, and it was just no English, get another taxi. So I said, okay, cool. So then I went to the taxi and said, taxi here, no English. I said, okay. So I got out my phone and did the whole come to this location. And then it hit me, nobody speaks English on this island, which already gives it a different feel to say your Phu Quocs and Nha Trangs, because generally you will find English speaking. There are lots of expat communities there already. As it's touristy, that will be something they accommodate too. But this didn't seem to have anything. It seemed very authentic Vietnamese. So I thought, okay, this is my first view. And then driving through the mountains, or, well, not necessarily the mountains, the windy roads leading up to the town center of Con Dao, thought this is, something slightly different, middle of nowhere. Didn't see any bikes really, only say 2 or 3. And then upon arriving, just how quiet it was, it almost gave me a bit of a shock, as in thinking, why does nobody know about this? And is this like mysterious? And then from exploring and my research, I was aware of the historical influence of Con Dao, perhaps in previous times in Vietnam. So maybe it still has that connotation as a war island. Who knows? But my first impression was, I don't know, it was like a mix of mystery, but also mystery, curiosity, and also, I guess, awe, because some of the things I was seeing in terms of just the sunset, the beaches, the mountains, the desertness of the whole place, it seemed to hit in quite a positive way. So that's what my first impression was.
You may see at the beginning of the show notes in the podcast channel that you're listening from some words that say text me a message. It's a great idea, don't get me wrong. I love hearing from you. And whether that's your thoughts on the episodes, some questions, messages of appreciation, I just love the feedback. It's really great. However, I feel it remiss of me to not thank you for them, but to not be able to respond directly to you. So if you have sent me a question, and I've got lots, and you haven't heard from me, there's a really good reason why. I actually don't have the ability in the technology to respond to you. They kind of expect that you would or I would answer the questions in the form of a show. And there's just kind of too many, and I just think it's just too personal not to do it that way. So I wanted to alert you to the fact that if you do send me a message through that connection option, I'm not going to be able to respond to you directly. So if you do have a question and it is time sensitive, or you want to send me any kind of message, can I suggest the following two ways? One, send me an email to whataboutvietnam@gmail.com. That is the email address that I have the most constant access to, and I will aim to get back to you ASAP. Secondly, if you go to the website for the podcast, which is whataboutvietnam.com, if you scroll right to the bottom, there is a chance for you to leave a voice message. Now, in that voice message, I can respond to you equally with a response in voice. So if you want a quick response, that's your next best way. But I just wanted to get this into the show, make you aware of this, as it really is becoming problematic. And I've just got too many, and I can't kind of go naming people and answering each question. That's just a little bit silly. So if you have sent me a text message before and you're waiting on a message back as a response, I'm so sorry. I cannot do that. But if you want to send the question again, I'd be more than happy to answer. And it's a good thing you bring up, because I think certainly coming out of Ho Chi Minh City to the quietness of that island would be a shock in itself. Like, it's only a 45-minute flight also, isn't it? Like, it's short and sweet.
Yeah, absolutely.
I already knew about the airport not being of any grand scale. And I also knew that there was very little English spoken there. So you're right. The island hasn't really been geared up for high-level tourism. Like, there's no buses arriving and, that real over-tourism kind of feel to it at all, which is what I understood. But I'll tell you how it was put to me by someone else. They said, look, it's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely pristine. But past a couple of days, you've got to be really imaginative and innovative in what you're going to do. Otherwise, there's nothing. It's quiet, it's serene. But if you get bored with that after a while, you've really got to start to look further afield. And I mean, you've already mentioned the war side of it and the prisons, and, we can go into that in a bit more detail. So yeah, I mean, I can understand and totally relate to what you said about the no English, it's quiet. Like, does anybody really know I'm here? How am I going to function as a tourist? Because there's some things that I think as a tourist we still want to have as kind of creature comforts, to know that, there's an ATM if I need cash, or, like kind of really basics. And when you get to some of these places, they're kind of the first things you think about. Well, how am I going to get around, and, how am I going to do things in this place? So from what I understand, accommodation-wise, there's either on the beach itself, or it's more back closer to the town, Con Son. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe so. We ended up going past all of the Six Senses and resorts that were 5 stars, and ended up luckily finding a place we booked in advance that was of, I guess, normal pricing. I think it was still quite expensive than what you would get in another place, but it wasn't extortionate. It was reasonable, shall we say.
So would that be like a 4-star place or a 3-star, or?
If I remember correctly, it was a 3-star. It was almost a standard like hotel room with a balcony, which was fairly nice, TV, etc. But it was a far cry, I guess, from the resorts that come up straight away, like your Six Senses, etc., which are slightly further away from, say, the main town centre. The main town centre, I think you could still get places like hostels. It's just you have to realize they don't speak English, so it will be a bit of a tricky one. I still remember just little things like asking for a motorbike took, I think, 10 minutes, even with Google Translate, when in other places it's just motorbike, yeah, 120 for the day. There you go. So little bits like that. But we ended up in like a 3-star one, I believe, in the town centre. So it suited well.
All right. So you were there 5 days. So I'm curious, what were some of the things you decided to do to take in the island?
Well, we had an itinerary, which was good because I concur with that point that after the first couple of days, once you get completely, I guess, once the novelty wears off that you're on this beautiful, mysterious island, you could get bored. And we had a bit of a weird situation, to be honest with you, where we ended up, it's a strange one. Our flights got rearranged on the way back without them telling us. So somehow this situation like transpired where the flight had already been, but we had to get back and they hadn't told us. So it was all a bit up in the air. And with that, I ended up getting stuck on the island for a bit longer, which was great. The others went home. So that's when it hit me that, wow, yeah, because I'm now stuck on this island, well, stuck. I mean, I could go home 2 days later. That means that, oh, what do I actually do? And as I was thinking about what I will actually do, I thought, I'm probably just going to sit on the beach, read a book, have some coffee, very basic things, which was great, don't get me wrong. But I was thinking, yeah, if I was here for an extended period, that's all I could really do. We had our itinerary, like going back to what I mentioned, which was to go snorkeling, then was to go hiking, then was to visit the museum and the prisons. And that was really about it. I'm sure there are other things we could have done, but fitting it into like our period where we could also have beach time, there we go. So yeah, I would certainly agree with that. We definitely, got to see little bits, and we spoke to locals who had to develop their English. I was lucky enough to interview our tour guide for my podcast, which was amazing. But yeah, after a while, you can get slightly bored, shall we say. And I probably wouldn't want to go solo, because I think the beauty of the trip is experiencing this incredible place with people, whilst if you're just by yourself, you can feel very isolated because, as you mentioned, a great phrase, nobody knows you're here. So it can be isolating and probably lacking in stimulation because there aren't many activities, quote unquote. There are a few bars that we managed to find, but not very, say, expat populated. Like you wouldn't be able to interact. I think I counted 5 foreigners the whole time I was there, which as I'm saying it now sounds like a lot because it didn't feel like there was even 5. Like I was looking around thinking there's no one. So it's a bit of a strange one.
Yeah, and I've only been to a few places in Vietnam where I've looked around and I've gone, and because I've got blonde hair, and I would look around and I'd go, I think I'm the only white person here. And I get the feeling that Con Dao is a little bit similar. And people say, when you see the photos and all the rest of it, you go, well, why aren't more people going? And I think we've actually hit the nail on the head. And that is, it's not super geared for, trendy bars on the beach. It, doesn't have an entertainment aspect to it. Kids-wise, they've got to really be into snorkeling and maybe watching the turtles and doing that, maybe some hiking and things like that. But there's no kind of artificial aspects to it to add on another layer. It is, I think, in a good way, still pretty raw. And I think if you're into that rawness and that untouched aspect, that is what you would enjoy. But as far as, a lengthy stay, it would be depending if you really wanted, like a wellness aspect to your stay where you really do want real quiet and whatever, you'll definitely get it there. I mean, I don't know, I was going to ask you about roosters, whether they still woke you up, but I don't think you're going to get karaoke bars and things like that or, yeah, that's
exactly. None of that stuff. It was very much like the rawness was its appeal, not for anything like touristy.
Yes, exactly. So as far as those things to do were concerned, can I kind of break down a couple that I'd just like to know a little bit more about? So there is a national park, and I believe the national park is quite beautiful and, teeming with wildlife and that is concerned. Did you decide to, go and venture through that and do some hiking, or was there any interest in that while you were there?
I think we were trying to find, say, an official hike to do to go with the wildlife, but for some reason we weren't able to. Perhaps the tour guides weren't available. I can't exactly remember, but we found someone to take us trekking, which, I mean, it has its similarities to a point. And then once we ended up going through the trek and getting to the top of the mountain, quote unquote, even though it wasn't, say, an official mountain, we then had snorkeling, which was something we'd done the day before. So it wasn't like snorkeling is great. So it's not like, oh, here we go, have to snorkel again. But it was like, okay, snorkel again, just because it's there. In terms of the hiking and experiencing the wildlife, that's not something that we did, I guess, the official way, but we did some trekking.
Right. So on the snorkeling side of it, did you decide to go out? Because I think there's about 16 islands that kind of constitutes Con Dao Islands from a plural sense. Is there any kind of people that can take you out to some of the other islands, and can you do some snorkeling at other places? Because I do believe the coral and the sea life is quite amazing.
Yeah, we were brought out to a few of the surrounding islands, which I wasn't too familiar with. And there's a small boat that does that for you, where you have the Vietnamese who all bring you, and they'll be, say, within 5 to 6 people, and then your crowd, and they take you from island to island. You do your snorkeling, and then it's rounded off by relaxing on a beach not too far away. The actual experience of that would have been amazing, except for the fact that the waves were extremely rough on that particular day, and a lot of people were getting sick. So it was, I guess, slightly mixed, where you'd be getting bumped around. The waves were crazy. People was getting sick. But except for that, if I was to dilute, like, for example, when the water was calmer, it was amazing. It was just, on that note, it was a bit wild. But that's what happens. You can be brought around by the Vietnamese when you go there.
I guess also for historians and for people who want to delve back into the history of Vietnam, certainly the island holds a lot of, I guess, some brutal history to do with the prison and definitely the way political prisoners were treated in such a brutal way in the prison. So it's become quite famous, I understand, for that. Did you decide to go and have a look at the prison or the cemetery or the museum?
Yeah, all of the above. We thought we'd have a look just to, I guess, get some historical impact. That's one reason, just to see what it's about. But the second reason is, going back to what we mentioned earlier, we'd done the trekking and the snorkeling. Thought, what else is there by the beach? So let's try this. So it was a combination of factors. But upon going there, it was it's a strange one, because I've been to the war museums in Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi, and I'm sure somewhere else. However, it's probably Con Dao. That's probably what's in my mind. So I don't think it differed enormously from those two, to be honest with you. Maybe if I had to give like a distinction, you actually went into the rooms, like the chambers that were used, and there are statues and exactly what happened. So if you go up close and personal, it can be a bit slightly brutal, slightly harrowing, especially if you try and empathize with what was happening, say, hundreds of years ago. So it's a strange one. That's definitely kind of the distinction. In terms of the museum, again, it was fairly similar to the ones you get in Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi. There was some slight, I guess, more historical context about the actual island and what that was used for, which was interesting because I guess I wasn't previously familiar with it. And it does explain, I guess, the mystery of the place, where if I speak to Vietnamese, some of my Vietnamese friends about Con Dao, that's the first thing they say. It's not how beautiful the beaches are. It's not about the scenery. It's always, oh yeah, the war place. So I do think it has that kind of spooky feel about it still, which can deter locals, but expats may not be so, I guess, put off by that because of a different, say, generation. So that's really what it was. They're all fairly near each other, to be honest with you, and not too expensive to go. I think within 50 to 100K. So, and fairly near the beach. So it's easy to explore and check out. That was my interpretation.
Yeah. And I mean, it was a dark place to go for me when I went into to do some serious reading on those prisons and just, how the French built the prisons and what they were used for, right up to and including the American War. So, that was a dark area of discovery, I guess, about the island. But certainly, as you say, I think it does have that stigma, and I think it's possibly one of the reasons that Vietnam hasn't decided to consider it or promote it to its own people. Getting on to the other things to do, can you talk to us about, food? Like, was there any kind of cute restaurants, or did you kind of move amongst hotels to, get some different aspect of food? Because, I'm thinking in my head also that could have been an interesting delving experience.
Yeah, and this is where I I feel slightly embarrassed, because usually when I will go to a new place in Vietnam, I'll do some research beforehand on, say, certain types of food that you must get from there, for example. And upon coming to Con Dao, I was really just curious of what it was. And it was at a point of my Vietnam journey where I hadn't been here, I can't remember. I say I hadn't been here that long. I'd been here about a year, so that's long enough. But upon going, I remember thinking, oh, what is different about Con Dao Vietnamese food? And I was almost just looking at the menu and choosing what I would choose everywhere else. And I also, I had this tradition when I was younger, I say younger, in my Vietnam journey, where I would look for great Western spots abroad. So not abroad, but in just different tourist destinations, just to, I guess, familiarize myself, where if I'm on holiday, I can, I guess, treat myself a bit more. So there were some amazing Western places in Con Dao, which surprised me. It really surprised me, actually, because I thought that the whole vibe would be very Vietnamese orientated. But I think that was recommended by a friend of a friend. So that's how it all came about. But in terms of the Vietnamese food cuisine there, I'd probably say the seafood. The seafood was up there. It was the first meal we had. I remember checking in, doing the hotel, going towards there, and unsurprising, I suppose. But that was definitely something. I mean, it was quite expensive for what you got, but overall, the palate was decent.
It is. Being an island, you would think the seafood would have to be good.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's not going to be good there, like where is it going to be good? So that's good to hear. So, Conor, would you say 5 days was long enough or too long, or something in between?
Probably just about enough, if not too long. I would advocate 3 or 4 days, to be honest with you. I think that's enough time to be amazed by the beauty, also see everything and not get too bored.
Yeah, and that's been my feeling as well, as far as when people have asked me, about a side trip from Ho Chi Minh City. And as we've talked, there's Nha Trang, there's Munay, there's Phu Quoc, and of course there is Con Dao. But as far as how long, I really am glad you've said that, because, I'm like you. I can get just totally overwhelmed with the white beaches, the sunsets, the long cool drinks, but by day 3, I'm starting to get a bit itchy feet, and I'm going, okay, so kind of what's next? So yeah, I'm glad you've kind of married that up for me. I'm also told by my travel company that best time to go is sort of March to September. Would that be right for you? You mentioned the waves, and I have heard out of season those waves can get quite big, and it can be quite turbulent. So do you still think March to September is the best time, or later or earlier?
Yeah, definitely, because if it rains, I feel like Con Dao suddenly loses an enormous amount of its appeal in terms of the activities you can do and the scenery. It would lose a huge part of that. So definitely, if you are thinking, I would advocate going at that time. I know a friend who went in Tet Holiday, I think. I think it was Tet Holiday. But for some reason, the weather was
just
miserable.
February, March. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just nothing. So, yeah, go around that time, I'd recommend.
Is there any kind of must-dos or must-don't-dos? Like, is there anything kind of to be warned people should be aware of? I mean, you mentioned some of the aspects of not speaking English. I think that was good to mention, that there isn't going to be that hospitality trend in Vietnam where most people in hospitality have got some level, good of English to get around. But do you have any, beware of? I've heard maybe you need to bring repellent for sandflies. Apparently the sandflies are pretty raucous on the beaches.
No? Anything you should be aware of?
A good book.
Yeah,
Make sure
definitely
you bring
good books. Yeah. I'd say definitely do that. Definitely bring some good books. Be
or bring
aware.
A good podcast. There's one.
Yeah, exactly.
There's an idea. Download a good podcast.
Yeah, I have some recommendations, I'm sure. Yeah, make sure you're in good company, which I'm sure you already would have planned.
You mentioned just about the flight issue coming back. Did you book that directly with the airline, or did you go through with your friends and that through a travel agent, or how did you actually go around booking it? I meant to ask.
A good question. I think it was through a Viva Vivu. I think so. But I can't remember if it was their fault or the airline's fault that we weren't informed. But that's another thing I should have mentioned, actually. The flights can be tricky. There's only 3 or 4 a day, both to and from there at very awkward times. I think the latest is, say, 2 p.m. So it's not one of those where you can, say, go for a weekend where you'll go on Friday night and come back Sunday night, which I've done with, say, Danang. That can't really happen. So it's a tricky one. I'd say with flights, yeah, that makes it slightly more awkward. So be aware of that.
In comparison to Nha Trang, Phu Quoc, Munay, you would still rate it as number 1 beach escape?
Number 1 beach escape, yeah. And the reason is just because of how beautiful it was, as in the untouched waters, the beautiful sand, the weather, etc. In terms of, I guess, if you want to escape to, go partying, for example, for a week or so, or have like a real westernized spot, then go to Phu Quoc. But I think Con Dao is a beach escape number 1.
Brilliant.
Thank you for listening. Check out the episode notes for more information.
What about Vietnam?
Don't forget to subscribe, rate and review, and stay tuned for more fun adventures in Vietnam.
What about Vietnam?